Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brandon Bramley, and I'm a committee member for Real Estate at Amazon. We are huge advocates for sharing real estate investment knowledge with our members, so we're happy to bring you this virtual event on house hacking to financial independence. We have Martin Krimmel joining with us today, who is actually also a committee member for Real Estate at Amazon, where he plans to go ahead and share his real estate investment journey and help explain exactly what house hacking is. Now, before I kick things off, I wanted to draw your attention to the comment box in the broadcast window. I will be aggregating questions for Marty throughout the presentation today, so please submit your questions early and often so we can move right into a Q&A at the end of the session. Now, let me introduce you to fellow real estate investor and house hacker, Marty Krimmel.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Really appreciate the intro. And yeah, hi everybody. Glad you're able to join today for this house hacking session. As Brandon mentioned, I'm part of the committee at Amazon for the real estate team, and I'm super excited. So this is one of my absolute favorite topics, house hacking, something I do at the moment myself. And yeah, it's going to be, I think, a really great session. And hopefully at the end of the presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A. So let's dive into it. All right, so a little bit about my story and kind of where I started in general and with real estate. And from there, we're going to move into house hacking, some more specifics around the benefits and drawbacks of house hacking. We'll jump into a real case study of the house hack that I'm currently doing here in Tukwila, Washington. And we'll talk about some lessons learned, and then at the end, the Q&A. So first of all, I'm actually not from the US originally. I'm actually from Berlin, Germany, and I moved to the States at 16 years old. One of the biggest kind of surprises for me was that just everybody had a house. Like I moved to upstate New York, outside of Buffalo, New York, and it was really one of the kind of big eye-opening moments for me. You know, I'm only 16. I come here and I've just never even imagined about owning a home. It's not been something that I grew up with. A lot of people in Germany are not generally homeowners. And if you are, you're generally quite wealthy. So for me, that was just a really kind of realization where I was thinking like, what's possible, right? Like what's possible in the US? And like one example is, you know, I grew up in an apartment right in the city, and it was me, my brother, and my mom. And the room that he was sleeping in wasn't even big enough for him to stretch out his legs. So it was really, for me, the thought of owning any type of real estate or living in a house was, in the beginning, really non-existent. So until I was about 25 years old, I really kind of subscribed to the Dave Ramsey type lifestyle. So for any of you that are familiar with Dave Ramsey, it's really the like no debt, right? No credit cards, no car payments, just really all cash. And so I still didn't really think, okay, real estate is something that I want to get involved with. It seemed just too much debt, right? I had no idea at the time that you can use debt in a smart way. So I really just believed that and didn't really look beyond what could be possible. So eventually, I moved to Seattle in 2013. And a couple of years after that, I was talking to a friend here who was owning a condo. And I was like, okay, I mean, tell me a little bit how you were doing that. And after getting some insights from him, I was like, hey, maybe this is something I can do, right? Maybe I should get into real estate and at least try it and see how I can manage. I'm pretty responsible with finances, and why not give it a try, even though it does mean, taking on debt. So I purchased my first home in Kent in 2017. And after that, I really kind of got interested in real estate. I was like, hey, like what can this do for me and like my future? And I started going to different events. And so one networking event, I'm sure if you've joined our past meetings, you've seen it, is Fixated at Real Estate, run by Tarl, who's a big time flipper in the area. And I went to that event and I met a bunch of people. And generally, you meet people that either own a bunch of real estate or no real estate at all. You don't meet a lot at those events that are kind of in the middle. But it gave me the belief that I was like, okay, maybe I can invest. Like maybe I can actually, try to grow the portfolio a little bit. So I started looking in Seattle. Everything was super expensive. Generally you need 20 to 25% down as a down payment. And I didn't have $100,000 just kind of laying around. So I thought about what I could still do because I still wanted to invest. So I went out of state and bought my first property in Buffalo, New York, which is where I moved from. So I knew the area pretty well. So I still wanted to get in the game that way. And then from there, I was like, okay, this is kind of working out. So let's go and buy another property again in New York, and this time Niagara Falls, where it's quite affordable. These are probably like C class, B class properties, and you can see that those are the two properties that I still currently own that I started with, and they're cash flowing pretty well, right? It's a much different price point than it is here, but again, I wanted to somehow start. Now, the big kind of lesson here, if I would have known about house hacking, which we'll talk about today, I would have house hacked. But I didn't know. I didn't know that house hacking was a thing and what it could do for me. So moving on from there, I was ready to house hack in 2020. I finally learned about house hacking. I understood what it was all about. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to go invest out of state anymore. I'm going to go invest locally. And how am I going to do it? I'm going to house hack. Well, I hit my first setback in 2020. So I met someone who was very much experienced with house hacking. We looked for a property. We found a great property in Des Moines, Washington. And we had it under contract. Everything looked great. But the deal fell through. And the reason the deal fell through was because that previous lender that I had on the fourplex that I had in Niagara Falls ended up not being a great lender. And when I was digging a little bit deeper, they had really bad ratings in the Better Business Bureau. And there were issues with my payments being accepted by them, so the mortgage payments. And eventually I tried to work that out with them and gave them the information that I thought they needed. And it ended up being one incorrect routing number that caused a 90-day late on my credit report. And if you have a 90-day late, you're automatically disqualified for getting a conventional loan for the next 12 months. So that was a huge setback. I was absolutely ready to house hack. I was ready to go. And this property fell through and I had to wait, And I put this on here just so you know that these things can happen, right? Like you will have setbacks in your real estate journey. No matter what. And at this stage, I could have said, I'm done, it's not meant to be. But I decided to keep going. And as you can see here too, this house I looked at recently appraised for about $650K. So just think about just that 1 year, right? Would have made a huge difference, but it wasn't meant to be. And I decided let's keep going anyways. So finally, last year, in May of 2021, I purchased my first house hack in Tukwila, Washington. And I've had a lot of friends at that time kind of reach out to me, and they wanted to learn more about real estate. They wanted to learn about what is this house hacking? What am I doing? And so I decided, I've been, at least for the last couple of years, learning about it. I might as well get my own license so I can at least help a couple friends if I wanted to, and also look at my own deals, right? So besides getting the house hack property, May was a busy month last year, and I also joined the house hack team at Compass Realty. So this team is great. There's 6 of us. Everybody's house hacking, and I just wanted to be around people that are doing what I'm doing, and they also have more knowledge than I have, right? So that I can kind of increase my knowledge as we go. And you can see here, so here I was with the closing documents. Also, quick story, there's a little name tag there. That same weekend, I was at a Wari, for all of you that may not know Wari, it's the biggest real estate investing group on Facebook, run by Jan Wanat, who's been on the meeting for our committee before, the real estate at. And the great thing is I met someone there who was doing room rentals, who was house hacking, who could also give me insights, and who has actually really helped me on my first deal. So it all goes back to networking, things like these presentations that are supposed to help you kind of start thinking about what's possible, and going out to meetings and networking with people in the industry is really going to help you. So quick summary, kind of where I am today. So I don't own a ton of properties, right? And this is why we do these Amazon showcases. So it's to kind of show you that a lot of times in real estate, you hear people, I have 100, 200, 300 doors or properties, and it can get kind of overwhelming. But the goal here is to really show you that it is possible, right? Like that it doesn't take a ton, right? And you don't have to have a lot of properties. It's just, if you want to get started, you can get started. So currently I own 4 properties, 13 doors across Washington, New York State, and Germany. So one condo in Germany as well. On the real estate agent side, so I've only had my license, as you saw, since May of last year, and I joined the team, the HouseHack team, only in October. And since really kind of starting, I was able to get 2 houses under contract. So one you see down here, they're both in Seattle, Washington. The left one for a fellow Amazonian, actually, who is house hacking it, 6-bedroom, 4-bath, and he's cash flowing positive $1,000 a month while living there. So amazing, right? That's really the power of house hacking that we'll dive into. And the other one is currently under contract, projected about $400 a month, which is also awesome in such a high cost market that we have here in Seattle. If you can cash flow at all right now, that's a win, right? And then the team overall, they own 16 properties. So this is the house hack team that I'm on. And they've brokered about $75 million in real estate. So again, it's a lot of experience there, which is really why I like joining them. And the other piece is work full-time at Amazon, right? I'm a senior program manager for the music team. It doesn't leave a ton of time. You have to really make the time in order to make this work. But I'm passionate about it, and I want to do it. And so I'm fine with kind of moving slower on some of these, and really helping people out that want to learn and that want to get into house hacking. All right, so next up, what is house hacking? So you have a lot of different definitions out there, but I like this one. At the core, house hacking is a decision for you to rent out a portion of your property in order to offset the costs of home ownership. So your mortgage, your taxes, utilities, and so on, right? The real benefit of house hacking is that, think about traditionally, right? Like, how do people buy a house? Generally, they buy a house, they love the kitchen, love the countertops. It has a lot of room for the family. And you move in and you have your mortgage, your taxes, your interest, and so on. And you kind of think that that's like the only way, right? So you just have that monthly payment that you do. But the benefit of house hacking is just you think about, what else can I do with the property? How can I use this property to my advantage, right? So a lot of people, and if you follow in real estate or follow Bigger Pockets, they always mention your Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, where you talk about assets and liabilities, right? So for many people, their house is a liability, but when you house hack, you're really turning it into an asset, right? You're really thinking about, what's the strategy that I have with this house before I buy it, and how can I make the house work for me and not just be stuck with a large monthly payment every month, right? So a few different ways you can house hack. I really like this graphic, gives a good overview of it. So the first one is rent out your extra bedrooms, right? So this is something that I'm doing that we'll dive a little bit more into. But renting out extra bedrooms is a great way to house hack. it's usually the most profitable one, but it can also be the most work if you have a lot of turnover from different tenants. But it's a really, really good strategy if you have a big house, multiple rooms, and you don't have to rent them all out. You can rent out one extra bedroom or something. Another strategy is like rent out an in-law suite, right? So the traditional mother-in-law, if you find a house that has that already set up, kitchen, living space, bathroom, and you can, separately rent that out. So that's a really good way as well. Sometimes you don't have that quite ready set up like that, so you might have to put in some work to make it that. But it's a great way to house hack. Probably the most traditional one is buy a multifamily home, right? So you can buy a 1 to 4 unit with conventional financing. And when you go above 4 units, it'll get commercial. So 1 to 4 unit, you can do conventional, and it's pretty straightforward, right? Like you buy a duplex, live on one side, rent out the other side. Or you buy a fourplex, you live in one of the units, and you rent out the other 3 units. Really, the benefit here is it's very separate. So if you like your privacy and you really don't want to deal with roommates or, constantly someone that's like living in the basement or something, you can opt for that strategy. It's usually also the costliest. So in Seattle, right, it's going to be hard to get a duplex, under $1 million, $1.2 million. And so it's hard to make it work from a numbers perspective, but it's still better than not doing it, right? So even if you can live on one side and you can get 50% of your mortgage paid for, that's still better than most, right? Where people just pay for their own mortgage. Another option, which I like, is renting out garage space or extra space storage. That's a really kind of cool way to provide some extra income. If you have storage in the back, there's people that look for storage. There's always, you'd be surprised just how many people are looking for storage, and I'll talk a little bit about it as well. But it's a great way to house hack if you don't want anyone in your home. And then rent out your yard. If you have a big yard, and we'll dive into this as well, rent it out for parking. All right, so some of the kind of, how do you generate this income? What are some of the different apps or companies out there to do that, right? So if you're going to do room rentals or unit rentals, to advertise your space, there's a lot of options, right? I've been using Craigslist, Facebook, our Amazon for rent. We have this vast network here of, great potential renters that is really a blessing, It's for us to have that and to be able to, if you have extra units and you want to rent them out, send it out there and see if you can get a fellow Amazonian to live with you. Craigslist, Facebook works really well also, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as well. One thing that I do, and I just talked about the storage rental and the parking. So there's an app called Neighbor, and this has been great. I mean, there's many people looking for parking, many people looking for storage. You just list your space, you set the price, you set a bunch of kind of rules around when can they have access, is there security, is it private access or public, and so on. And you can generate some income that way. Airbnb, most people are familiar with Airbnb. Now where during the pandemic, definitely their Airbnb was tough to come by. Now where things and the restrictions have loosened a bit, a lot of people are back into Airbnb, and you'll get a ton of interest for Airbnb, especially if you live close to the airport. So in my case, I'm not very far from the airport, or if you're just in a good location, right, where travelers want to go. Airbnb is a great choice. Travel nurses, also really good one. One of the drawbacks is just short term, but one of the 3 to 6 months. But one of the benefits is travel nurses are basically gone most of the time. So you're Your space isn't going to be used all that much. And if you furnish the room, you can rent it out to travel nurses. Two that I also really like, Sniff Spot. If you love dogs, I have a dog, so I love dogs. If you have a big yard, $8 an hour I saw, you can have other people's dogs run around and make a little bit extra income there. And Hip Camp, if people want to pitch a tent, right? Again, if you have a yard, that's a great option as well for travelers, and you'll get a lot of people coming and utilizing your space. All right. So what are the benefits of house hacking? Why do I think you should house hack? So one of the benefits is the ability to invest in real estate with low money down. Right. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. If I would have known about house hacking in 2018, I would have house hacked. But I thought that I need 20 or 25% down in order to invest in real estate. And when I was looking at that time at a even 1-bedroom house in Seattle, it was $500,000. So 25%, you're going to need $150,000 in order to invest, which is a lot of money, right? But if you house hack, you can go with as little as 0%. So this is mostly applicable to VA loans. And I just recently met a veteran, and that's what she was doing. House hacking with 0% down, which is amazing. And a lot of people aren't aware of it. And if you can't do 0%, if you're not a veteran, 3.5%, 5%, 10%. Again, you don't need 20% down. That's really the beauty of it. Also, you get lower interest rates, right? Than traditional investments. Generally, it's around, you could say, about a 0.5 percentage point, which is great, right? Interest rates just went up, continuing to go up. So house hacking with an owner-occupied loan really helps you from that perspective. The expenses are paid for by tenants, right? This is the big one. You're not paying for your mortgage. You might be paying for some of it, but your tenants are paying at least some of your expenses. I also put on here, pay less for owning a home than renting. And of course, homeownership is expensive, right? There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to say if the roof breaks on your home, you'll have to pay for it. If it's on a rental, you don't have to pay for it. But what I mean here is, if we go back to, for example, the Seattle house hack from fellow Amazonian, if he's making $1,000 living there, he couldn't, and he rents a 1-bedroom. This particular place was in Cherry Hill, so south of Capitol Hill. You'd be paying $2,000, $2,500 and more for a 1-bedroom, but instead he's living in that location and is actually getting paid to live there. Next one, cash flow and build equity. So ideally, we want to have a house hack that cash flows, right? It's very hard, as I mentioned, to cash flow while you're living there, but it's possible. But definitely when if you were to move out, right, you want to cash flow ideally and have that property pay you. And build equity. So this is something, one of the benefits of real estate, of course, appreciation, loan pay down, cash flow, and tax benefits. So the appreciation and loan pay down is a big one. So a lot of times I have people that will be like, well, this isn't cash flowing, so I don't really, want to buy it. But you forget that there's still loan pay down. So someone is still paying on your loan, right? That is still like cash in your pocket, even if you're not making anything on top of that. Someone is still paying the loan, which is just a great benefit of real estate in general and house hacking. And then you can repeat it after 1 year and build up a rental portfolio fast. So if you want to get into real estate investing, in my opinion, this is the best way to do it because as part of the stipulation for an owner-occupied loan, you have to stay there for a year. But after you're done with living there for the year, if you wanted to, you can get a new house hack, right, a year later, and you can repeat that. One of the things to keep in mind is you have to move what they call move up. So you can't, start with $1 million house and then your next house hack is a $200,000 condo. But, start slow, and if you wanted to, you can build up from there. All right, not everything is going to be great about house hacking, right? Even though I love it, there's going to be some drawbacks. So one of the drawbacks is sharing your space with others, right? Again, we talked a little bit about strategies before of how you can avoid that. But let's say you want to do the room rentals and it's just a one-story house. You're going to have to share a kitchen and potentially bathroom and all that with other people. And so I like the picture on the top right here. That is something that I know has happened with tenants of mine where the clothes get discolored because everybody's throwing in their laundry and things like that. So this is something that a lot of people, they're like, oh, I don't want to share my place with others. Again, I would encourage you to think about, is there a way where you can minimize that or avoid that? So we'll talk about that with my house hack. But you can definitely find ways by where you're splitting up the units, and you might never see your tenants. You don't have to, even though they're living in your house, you might see them very rarely. So there's definitely options for you available. The next one is landlord responsibilities. So we have it down here, late payments, vacancies, broken toilets, no rent, things like that, repairs. A lot of people, that it scares them away, right? And I understand too, because for myself, it was also a bit scary. I didn't want to fix a broken toilet, at 1 a.m. And it's also not something I'm very good at necessarily. So again, you can either let that stop you, or you can think about what are other things that can do, right? Can you hire a property management company? Can you hire someone that can help you out with that? And lastly, moving. And this applies if you want to do this every 1 to 2 years, right? You can do one house hack and never house hack again. Although I would encourage you to do it again. But the moving part is something that scares people away. And you can do a couple house hacks in, let's say 10 years, right? Maybe do 3 or so. And you'd still be better off than most people that are not house hacking. All right, 1 second. Okay, so what to look for in a great house hack? How do you find a house hack that's worth living in? And what should you be looking for when you start looking at houses? So first of all, separate units, right? This is something we mentioned a little bit. Very straightforward. Look for a duplex. Look for a triplex. Look for a fourplex. Again, you want to stay under the 5-unit to stay in conventional financing. And if you're in a market that's not so expensive, this might be pretty straightforward. So a little story here. Again, I moved from Buffalo, New York. I have a brother there, and I literally told him, I'm like, a duplex there is $200,000. And I told him, I'll give you the down payment, and then we can just split everything, 50-50, because it's relatively inexpensive. And this was about 1.5 years ago, and he still didn't want to do it. Despite me explaining to him all the benefits of house hacking, and I would even support him with that, he didn't want to do it. But this is definitely the most straightforward one, especially in an area where it's not as expensive as Seattle. Then look for a number of bedrooms and bathrooms, right? So if you can't get into the duplex or triplex, look for a big house. Look for a house that has multiple bedrooms that you could rent. Kind of the 2-to-1, 3-to-1 bedroom to bath ratio is ideal. When you get into the 4-to-1, it gets a little tricky. And that's actually something in my house where, downstairs is a 4-to-1, or it's 4 to 1.5 basically, but it's only one shower. And I've had tenants or potential tenants, as we walk through, say, no, thank you. Right. So think about that when you look at the house next time. Look at that ratio of bedrooms to bathrooms. Next one is second kitchen. This is a big one. If you want to, if you want a house hack and you want to be somewhat private, if you want to live in your own space, you don't want to share a kitchen, look for homes that have second kitchens. They're not always easy to come by, So you may have to be creative and find spots where you can add a second kitchen. But that's something you should be thinking about when you're looking for a house hack property. Look for basements, right? Look for basements that you can convert into a separate unit. It's not cheap to do a full-on basement conversion nowadays, especially out here. It can run you over $100,000. But look for that. Like maybe there isn't that much work that you have to do, right? Maybe it's not going to be a full remodel. But look for places with basements. Back on the East Coast, almost every house had a basement. Here it's a little bit tougher to find, but look for that. Next up, a large lot. To build a detached accessory dwelling unit, a DADU, or rent out parking, as we mentioned. And this right down here is an actual picture of the lot where my house is. So as you can see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 cars. This is about as passive in terms of income as you can get. I have a friend that calls, because you always hear passive income with real estate, but it's really, he calls it managed income. It's not really ever totally passive unless you invest, let's say, in a syndication and you're really completely hands off. But this is really passive, right? Like it cannot get more passive than that. It's I give them a parking space and they pay me for it every month. I don't do anything else, right? That's all there is to it. Next one, light value add, right? Look for painting, flooring, depending on how handy you are and how many people that can fix it up. Maybe you look for a bit bigger projects, but I like light value add, especially if it's the first or second house hack. For you to really get into it and add some value. Look for lots of parking, especially for the bedroom rental. That's important. And close to transit, right? This applies not just to house hacking. Of course, it's just general, like good investments for investing strategies for real estate. And a healthy rental market. Like we have a very healthy rental market here in Seattle, high rents, job growth, employers, generally low crime. And so it's a very good market. So, obviously when you're house hacking, you're kind of tied to wherever you are. But even within your area, look for those specific neighborhoods where this is a place where not just you would want to live, but potential renters want to live. All right, so one moment. I need some water. So let's jump into the real life case study here of my own house hack. So I mentioned this in Tukwila, Washington. For anyone that's on here that's not from the area, it's about 20 minutes south of downtown Seattle. So I purchased this property last year for $705. It was listed at $729, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. I mentioned earlier the networking, right? Making connections. So I got this one off market because my agent had a friend who was an agent who was selling or listing this property. And, she told him that I was looking for a house hack. And they took it off the market because you'll see in a second, you'll see why. Wasn't well maintained. So they took it off the market, wanted to kind of clean it up a bit and then relisted. And it also was tenant occupied at the time. But before they ever did that, they reached out to me. I looked at it and I said, okay, I think this has a lot of potential. So the rehab on that ended up being $30,000. Honestly, with rehabs, you usually go above on what you think. Like I thought it was going to be much less. And there's ways to decrease your rehab. The biggest, almost 50% of that rehab budget was adding 2 more bedrooms to the property. But just in general, when you watch HGTV, they always make it seem very quick and simple. And that's not so costly, but rehabs can usually get up there. So in this case, all in all, include furnishing, adding washer dryer, and so on, was $30,000. And the current value of the property is about $850,000. So you can see that it's an equity gain of $145K, $30,000 sweat equity, and $150K market appreciation. right? We're in a market where we've seen really good appreciation here. Not every market is like the Seattle market, that's for sure. But pretty cool numbers, I think, on like the first house hack. And then also as a bonus, there was a large lot, right? So 13,000 square foot lot, which I looked at this before. What's the minimum requirement to subdivide in Tukwila to make this in its own separate plot? And the minimum lot size was 6,500 square feet. So think about that, right? When you're looking at properties, think about what are your other strategies, your other opportunities. And I looked at current lots. This is an area that's kind of up and coming here. There's a lot of new development happening. And so it's probably worth around 200K. So total net worth gain on just this one house hack would be 345, right? When we take all that together, which is pretty cool. And this doesn't take into account any cash flow or they're not paying mortgage and so on at the moment. So adding value, as I mentioned, 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath house. I saw opportunity to make it into a 6-bedroom, 2.5-bath. Further on, it needed some new paint, some new flooring in the bedrooms that we extended, or that we added, as well as some flooring in the entryway. We added a washer and dryer in the upstairs unit. There was landscaping to do, which you'll see in a moment, and furnishing it, right? So if you do the room rental, you want to furnish the common areas. You don't have to furnish the rooms, but you want to furnish the common areas. And there's lots of places for that, right? OfferUp, Buy Nothing, Craigslist, our own Amazon for sale, lots of different places. So you can, all depending on how much work you want to put in, right? You can furnish it for next to nothing. Like one of the couches was $50 on OfferUp, and it was in really good shape. Or you can, spend a lot of money on it. That's kind of like up to you, how you want to do it and how much work you want to put in. All right, so some visuals. Instead of just seeing the PowerPoint slides, I wanted to give you all some visuals of the property. This is how it looked initially. So you can see heavily overgrown, right? Whenever you talk about off-market properties, that's one big key indicator, right? So they, if this was on market, which, like I said, it was for a little while, people look at it and they're like, no, thank you. Just you can hardly see the front of the house. Just a lot of overgrowth in the backyard, in the front. There was trash, in different parts around the house. And that brings these little creatures up here, rats. So that was a big one for this property, and something that also almost like scared me away. I was like, I don't know much about, I know rats aren't good, but what does it take to get rid of them? And this was a major problem, but you can see it as an opportunity as well, because again, this takes away a lot of people that don't want to deal with it. Some more issues that this house had initially. So you can see wasn't well maintained. Inside there's like I said, it was tenant occupied. A lot of, there's just a lot of stuff piled all over the place. You can see one of the bedrooms here. Carpet's not looking great at all. There's rat poop on it. You can see the dryer vent here. This was interesting. There was actually no venting to the outside. So even though you see this where you hook up your dryer vent, it would vent just into the crawl space. And they, at the time, actually didn't even have it hooked up at all. So it was just all the hot air was just blowing into the laundry room. It had ants, right? So you can see it in the bathroom, lower right. And then cracked stovetop. And you can see at that point, I started to clean it up, right? Like at this stage, the tenants had moved out. I started to clean, and every morning or every other day or so, I'd go there. And then unfortunately, if I see rat poop still, I was like, okay, the extermination hasn't hasn't quite worked yet. And then finally, I got the place cleaned out, and things were looking good. And then I had these little maggots in the carpet, so I had to get the carpet steam cleaned, get them all out. So that was an adventure. So just to show you, there's some work that was involved here for sure. So what do you do if you have all these kind of issues? I would say gather your friends, ask them to help you out a little bit, buy them pizza, buy them something to drink, and just get people to help you. And even if it's just on the weekends, you still have to probably put in a lot of work on your own. Like a lot of times after Amazon, 8, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night, I would go to the house, I would paint a little bit. So it's definitely work, right? Again, depends on the property that you buy, but it can be work. But if you know that it's worth it in the end, you'll be willing to do it. And of course, on the top right here, those two were very helpful. The left one is my dog, and then the other one, the little Aussie, just loving life. And they were good stress relievers during that time. Here's some of the projects so that were happening. So you can see adding the washer and dryer. We did a new hookup to the left here. So we actually, like I said, added the non-existent washer and dryer before. In the top unit, we also had to wire new electrical in order to connect it. And then you can see kind of the framing here for the bedroom, one of the bedrooms. We basically removed the wall, extended it by a couple of feet, made it into like a nice new bedroom. And then flooring, as I mentioned, kind of the entryway. And you can see to the right, it's just, we walled it off basically. That was a dining room area that turned into a bedroom. And so just walled it off, mud, paint, and it turned out really, really nice. And then adding the door here, we had multiple doors, but this one was to kind of separate the upstairs unit, which is where I am currently, from the downstairs. So the upstairs had a kitchen, as I mentioned earlier, second kitchen, but I wanted it to be somewhat private. So just added a door, which was, previous was just kind of steps upstairs to the unit, but all you had to do was add the door, and now it's separate living space for you. And if you wanted to, you can keep it open, of course. But this kind of gave me the separation that I was looking for. And so then this is how it kind of looks today. So you can see we cleaned up the landscaping quite a bit. The front looks more green now. Now we're heading into spring here, but you can see different on the lower left there. This was one of the rooms that we extended, made into a full bedroom, and then furnished it, right? So you can see the kitchen area, living room space, as I mentioned, new carpet, new paint, and just made it a lot nicer than what it was before. All right, so finding tenants, talked about this a little bit. If you don't want to do it yourself, which in my case, I actually started with a property management company. You can start out with them. And I was traveling right after I left to, I basically moved into the house, and then I was traveling to Germany for a month. So I had a property management company initially help me out. We ended up splitting when I came back, and I managed most of this, or all of it, myself. So for finding tenants, as we said, Facebook, Craigslist, use your network. A couple of screenshots here for travel nurses, Seattle Housing for room rental. The Facebook groups have been really good. And just become a great interviewer, right? So if you interview at Amazon, we have a certain bar. Have that same bar for your tenants. You don't have to ask them for leadership principles, but think about how you interview, and you're going to live with those people. So have a high bar for the tenants that you're going to have live in your space. So the Tequila house hack here by the numbers, right? We want to look at the numbers, like where am I at currently? So you can see there the room rental that I'm doing. I'm renting out 4 rooms, and then I'm renting out parking, as I showed you. So the total income at the moment is just over 4,000. And then to the right, you can see my mortgage, water, sewer, garbage, TV, internet and security, electric, gas, heat, and the extermination service that I have. Those are average costs over the last 8 or so months that I've been here. Of course, they will vary month on month depending on usage, but I include all the utilities and everything in the rent. So they're just paying a flat fee, and then I pay the rest. So you can see here, about $100 to live in the 3,000 square foot home, and it's only 20 minutes to downtown Seattle. And it really is only 20 minutes, unless you leave at between 6 and 9 a.m. when everybody leaves. But door to door, I'm very close to the thruway, and so you're very quickly in downtown, which is amazing. And this is the power of house hacking, right? Now, one thing you'll notice here, I didn't have any other expenses. Usually I say CapEx or maintenance added in here. A lot of that I factored in my initial rehab. But when you look at numbers moving out, which we'll look here on the next slide, you do want to factor that in, right? So your maintenance cost, your CapEx should always be calculated in when you're analyzing a property. All right, so projected post move out, right? So this is kind of the analysis that template that I use usually when looking at analyzing a deal. So you can see here, what I added is if I'm currently in the upstairs unit, which is 2 bedrooms up here, and I'm pretty sure I could rent those out for $1,000 each. So adding that in there, and then to the right, up here, the cost assumptions, you can see you want to factor in vacancy, maintenance and repairs, and your CapEx, right? If your furnace, your roof, issues like that, you want to factor that in. Of course, I'm still paying the utilities, so I want to factor that in. And you can see, so once I leave this property, all things being equal, it would cash flow almost $900, about 15% cash on cash return, 6.2% cap. So really nice numbers, right? To be able for a house hack to live for $100 a month, and then when you move out, the house is actually paying for you, right? So I think this is kind of the beauty of it, right? And this is where you want to get to. And if you think about the other properties currently, netting about $1,000 between the 2 of them, so that's $2,000. So if you do this, just do this a couple, like every other year, every 3 years or something, and you'll have a nice little rental portfolio. All right, so finishing up with lessons learned. Treat this as a business, not a hobby. Right? I'm sure you've heard this in other scenarios as well. It's really important you stay on top of the financials, the tenant management. Make sure you run it as if it was your business, so that you don't run into any major issues. Set boundaries and ensure that you treat everyone as tenants. So unless I would say, you were living with 5 friends and now you just move into another house with those same 5 friends, you should all be friends because you were friends before. But in general, try to, if it's just people you don't know, they're your tenants, right? So you have to find the right balance between treating them as tenants versus friends. You'll still be nice to them and respectful, but I've had this happen where just all of a sudden it's like, oh, is it okay if I pay a little bit late? Can you do this? Can you do that? Because then they start to think, well, you're just, another one of the roommates, but this is your house, right? And you're the landlord in this case. So you need to make sure you set the proper expectations. Set up systems to make your job easier. So Avail, Cozy, great for screening tenants, setting up leases, collecting rent, right? Systemize as much as you can to make your job easier. Assign space. So I give everybody assigned cupboard space. So that way there's no arguments, right? No confusion. They know where to put their stuff, and it works out great. Another way, it's easier than you think, and it's harder than you think, right? So when I started, I thought landscaping, that was going to be easy. I'm going to do it with a friend. It was way hard. I decided it's better to pay somebody. It was just so much work. And you realize that once you get into it, and then some of the things that you think are really hard will turn out to be easier. Like I thought it might get really hard to find tenants, but within a couple of days, my first rental, I had 60 applications within 3 days on one room. Find people that have knowledge and expertise, but trust your instincts, right? So my property manager initially told me I couldn't rent this room for $1,100, but I ended up being able to do it anyways, even though he had 20 years more experience. So people mean well, but always try to see if you can trust your instincts. Be ready to put in the work, as you saw. It can be a lot of work, but it all depends on what kind of property you buy. But just remember that definitely want to be ready to put in the work. Do what you're good at and delegate the rest. So I've realized I don't really want to fix a bunch of stuff every week. So I've hired somebody, who comes every other weekend, and he does a lot of the little maintenance pieces. The only person you should compare yourself to is who you were yesterday. I think I heard this on a TED Talk or something, but I really like it because in real estate and just like in life in general, you'll start to compare yourself to the people that are doing, 40, 50 deals, and you're like, is this enough? Am I doing enough? Definitely it's enough. As you can see here, I don't have a lot of properties, but it's still working out quite well. So just do what works for you, right? And make sacrifices to succeed. So this last picture down here, I was in Palm Springs last week, and this was really cool. The lady said, yeah, go ahead, take a picture of this. This was her living room. It turned out she was a real estate investor as well. 52 years old, 2 kids, twice divorced. And she had about, I'm not sure how many properties, she wouldn't disclose, but I would say probably at least 7 or so. And she was sacrificing. And if you look at this picture down here, there's a mattress. And so she was living in her living room so that she could rent out the upper 3 bedrooms to Airbnb and the lower 2 bedrooms to her kids, especially during the prime season down there in Palm Springs. And I was really impressed. I'm like, a lot of people are a lot younger with a lot less responsibilities, and they wouldn't do that. So sacrifice, right? Sacrifice to succeed. If you want to make it work, you can make it work. All right. And then how can you connect with me? Instagram, Facebook, Slack, Chime, of course. There's a Compass agent website as well. So if you want to reach out, ask questions, feel free to do so. I'm always happy to chat, always happy to help. And I'll leave everyone just with a quote. I always like quotes. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And with that, I'm done.
Awesome. Well done, Marty. That was a great event. It looks like we ran up to the top of the hour, but let's try to get through a few quick questions, and then we'll plan to go ahead and email out the answers to some after the fact. But one of the themes was kind of about the market condition. So with the current market situation, is house hacking a good idea, and why start now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say absolutely. I think the beauty again of house hacking is, in my opinion, you minimize your risk, right? So this is actually the great thing. Like even as the interest rates are going up, market is quite expensive, especially here, and people are paying definitely crazy amounts of money, right? Like $100,000-$200,000 over asking. So you don't want to just house like find a property where you're paying $200,000 too much. You still want to buy a good deal, but you're minimizing your risk by having a strategy of what you're going to do with the house, right? Versus just buying $1 million property that you can't rent out, that you don't know what you're going to do with it, and you're stuck with this huge mortgage. So I definitely think house hacking is still a great idea, especially in this market, but you should still buy the right house and the right deal and don't overpay.
Awesome. Good call out. Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned before, but I'm also a house hacker. I actually have a duplex in Ballard, so not down in Tukwila, but I was able to do it up here as well and live for practically free in a place I want to live, where homes cost about $1 million. But another question that came up is more about the loans for house hacking. So how much loan can an individual take, and how do they actually repeat this every 1 to 2 years if their income stays the same?
Yeah, good question. So generally you can have 10 conventional loans, although when it's an owner-occupied loan, you can actually have more. If your income stays the same, right? So one thing is obviously save up, right? If you're living for free or nearly free, you're able to save up more money, right? So you're able to save up more of a down payment for the next one. You do have to move, as I mentioned, move up. But you can move up a little bit. So don't buy a crazy expensive property the next time around. So yeah, even if your income stays the same, because you're house hacking, you should technically be able to put more money in your pocket and save up a little bit more money. And again, you can do lower down payment even on the next one. Just make sure it's a better property. Another thing to think about is, in my case, because I have these other rentals, so I've seen people invest out of state where they can cash flow, and you can count, I think, up to 75% of that income towards your loan amount. So when you apply for a new mortgage, you can use that income that you get from the other rentals. So that's a big one as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome call out, Marty. I'm actually working, hopefully here in the next few months, on my next house hack, and I'm working with the lenders, and they'll actually use the income that you have for your current house hack to actually reduce your debt to income ratio to help you kind of wipe away that debt so you can get approved for another loan. But it looks like we're running out of time, so I'll do one last question before we kind of close it out, and then what we can do is follow up with everyone after the fact by email from broadcast. But where does someone start, or what resources or who can help them find a house hack, regardless of what area they're in?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in this area right here, be happy to connect you with the team, and we'll definitely be able to help you. If you're not in the Seattle or Washington area, I would always start with Bigger Pockets, to be honest. The biggest real estate forum in the States. That's how I started. That's how I got into real estate investing. And there's a ton of house hackers and a lot of information about house hacking, resources for you to learn about it. And generally, there's agents that specialize in house hacking, or that at least have some kind of knowledge, because they know that's a big piece for people on Bigger Pockets.
Awesome. Well, shoot. Well, thank you so much, Marty, for joining us today and sharing your insight on house hacking with the team. We have plenty of comments, so we'll definitely have to have you get back to them by email via broadcast to answer some of those. But also for everyone on the call, thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. I hope everything was insightful for Marty. I know it was for me, even though I already house hacked. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and record and post this event to our Real Estate at Amazon broadcast page in case you missed anything, or if you want to share the video with your friend. But please make sure you subscribe to Real Estate at Amazon, our email alias. Also check us out on Gather, and then keep an eye out if you do subscribe for our newsletter that comes out every month. But other than that, thanks again, Marty, and we'll chat with